Hello, we're going to talk quickly about a very underrated bit of software, device drivers. Now, a device driver is a program that allows the operating system to communicate with a peripheral device. So what is a peripheral? A peripheral is a device that connects to a computer. And it's something which isn't a core component, but we connect either with a USB cable most of the time, or it could be wirelessly as well. We're thinking printers, webcams, keyboards, mice, headphones, scanners, graphics tablets, all of these external things you plug in, they need to have device drivers. And the fact that I've just reeled off quite a few examples there of different peripherals is sort of an intro into why we need device drivers. And even looking at, say, printers, well, how many models of printer do Canon make? Loads of different ones. Some have got scanners built in, some don't. Some do color printing, some don't. Some do A3 printing, some don't. There are other printer manufacturers too, of course. Epson, Brother, Kyocera, loads of different brands of printer with so many models between them. And basically there are so many combinations of these peripheral devices, but the OS has got no real chance to be able to communicate with all of these different things unless it's got some help. And the device driver is what gives it that help. Because don't forget, if the role of the OS is to manage the hardware of the computer, these are examples of hardware, it's got to manage these. The fact that there are so many makes it hard for it, unless we've got device drivers. A lot of the time when you plug in one of these peripherals, you see a message like this, where it's having to install the device driver. A lot of the time this is automatic. It can be automatic because the OS recognizes it, perhaps from one it's got already. It might also recognize it from an online database. But sometimes if it has some storage built into it, maybe a printer's got a little bit of ROM, for example, the driver might get installed automatically through that storage. But as you might know, a lot of the time you have to just Google and look up the device drivers and install them yourself. So it's worth looking at this in a little bit more detail in relation to the benefits of drivers. So device drivers allow for abstraction. This is a paper 2 concept, and it's where we are simplifying a problem by removing unnecessary detail. So we don't need to know that for paper 1, but we do need to understand why that's useful potentially and how that works here. Well, as a programmer, you don't really want to be having to write code for all of these thousands, if not millions, of different peripherals. There are so many different webcams, so many different printers. It's not really feasible for you to write code which works with all of these. So instead, as a programmer, you write commands for generic peripherals. What is a keyboard typically having? Let's write code for a typical keyboard. If a user doesn't have a typical keyboard, they can install the device driver for their specific device. And that does the work for the programmer. That will then translate the generic commands into the specific commands the device actually requires. A lot of peripherals work fine based on those generic commands. So here is a list of some. I've got way more, some of drivers installed on my computer. And you can see some have got very generic, vague names. Clearly, whatever these things are, didn't need a fancy driver. They just used the default one which Windows had. But I've got a couple of Logitech things. I've got a mouse, I've got a keyboard, which is Corsair. They're a little bit more complicated. So perhaps those devices needed some specific code so they could communicate with my OS. Therefore, when I plugged in my keyboard, it installed this specific Corsair driver to allow my keyboard to communicate with Windows. The alternative to having device drivers is the OS only is able to support specific peripherals. So if you're Microsoft, you have to decide, right, what are the 50 top webcams in the world? Let's make sure we write code to work with these 50 webcams. Well, what's the issue with that? Well, the user has such little choice. So with drivers, they've got the choice to use any peripheral. They just install the driver when it comes to actually using it. And also, if you have drivers, you only install the drivers you actually require. Therefore, we're not wasting file space of the OS, including code for peripherals you don't even have. So although they are a little bit of an awkward add-on, device drivers give us a lot more flexibility and it's a lot more efficient because we only install the drivers we need for the peripherals we actually have.